Hey, this is Drew Bennett from Ben Spark Family Adventures back with another video. Today I am talking with author Samantha San Miguel about her upcoming book, Spineless. And Samantha, would you like to tell us more about Spineless and what it's all about?
Sure. Excuse me. Spineless is set in Florida in the late 1800s. And it's about a boy who goes down to, so in Florida, back in the day, they had these massive, they're called grand hotels, and they were just these monuments of architecture that were completely financially unsustainable, but they were so cool. So he goes down to a grand hotel in hopes that the climate will help his asthma and meets up with the proprietor's daughters, and they have adventures.
Okay, and those adventures, I found that really, really cool. I grew up on Cape Cod, and so with the ocean, the ocean theme of it, with the aquatic animals and all that stuff. I'm right outside of Woods Hole, so we spent a lot of my summers going to the Woods Hole Children's Science School. So going fishing, doing all that stuff. So finding that Algie wants to be a naturalist, that was really interesting. How he was trying to explore the world around him, but at the same time, a lot of things outside made it difficult for him because of his asthma. So,
Hmm.
what made you decide that Algie would have asthma and how that would figure into the story?
So I'm an RN by profession. I've always
Okay.
known I wanted to be a writer, but there's two paths to do that, right? You can either go to school or you can just go for it. And most of the writers I admire are the go for it writers, so that's what I did. Um, I worked in emergency and critical care for a long time, especially if you're measuring time by heartbeats. Um, I retired from that profession when we had our second daughter, but it had a very lasting impact on me. And I found it interesting that most of the children's books that I was able to find that featured characters in something other than perfect health, the entire book revolved around their their health issues. And I really wanted to write something where we had a character, and sure, he's not, he, he has a health problem that affects his life. It's not just something cosmetic that never affects the character, but it's a side issue. It's not the entire focus of the plot because the entire focus of a person is not your health and the way your body works. It's all kinds of things. So that was one of the reasons um, why I gave him that characteristic, and it also ties into we go into the Florida red tide in the book, which if you're from Florida, you probably know what that is, but it's where it's an algae bloom, and the algae, the toxins get into the air and they affect people with respiratory issues. So that ends up playing into the book.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that it gets into the air. I thought
It
just really in the
does.
water. Oh,
No, even
that's
like
interesting to
when you
know.
go down to the beach, you can
Sure.
feel it anybody in your throat if it's during a bloom.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I did
Yeah.
not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here I was thinking. I knew a lot about being by the ocean, but we really didn't get that much up. You know, up north.
Yeah.
So weird. I kind of noticed. Is Jules Verne one of your favorite authors in some way?
Okay, so I have a very complicated relationship with Jules Verne because
Okay.
I love his aesthetics. I love his technology. But so the first book that I ever read of his was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Mm-hmm.
And I read it when I was quite young, and the cover had this enormous picture of an octopus just gnashing the Nautilus down. I'm like, oh, there's going to be sea monsters everywhere in this book. It's right there on the cover. And I read and I read. And if you've read Jules Verne, you know he can go and he can go. And my
Right.
10-year-old self is like, where are the giant octopuses? And, there's like, a page of them way near the end, and I was like, what is this? I feel like I have been wronged. How can I fix this? This book is my way of fixing this.
Yes, I did notice that. I just like the airship even mentioning, all that part of it. I'm like, huh, okay, because I really loved the Disney movie, The 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah.
And I loved reading those books, and I guess I didn't. It didn't affect me in that way. I really liked all of the the technology and how that was part of it. That was really cool. And in this book, you talk about some different technology. There's an airship. There's all sorts of things that it really remind me very much of the Jules Verne aesthetic. Really. Yes. And I thought that was very cool.
I'm so glad. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's sometimes referred to as a historical fiction, and I'm over here like there weren't actually airships zipping around over the Gulf of Mexico at that time.
I know. I was really like, okay, well, that's interesting. But I thought it was cool because you even think too of like around the world in 180 days, and all that too. So those airships and submarines and just but another very interesting part of the book was I don't know how much we could talk about without giving away.
To be quite honest, I don't either.
Yeah, I don't want to give stuff away, but Algie finds a new species. Could I say that?
Yes, he does.
He finds this new species of aquatic animal, and he spends the time trying to protect that animal, along with his cohorts, Frankie and Lulu. So, did I say Franny, or is it Franny or Frank?
Frankie.
Frankie. I thought it was Frankie. Frankie and Lulu. And those are the daughters of the owner of this large hotel that he's staying at. So, and they get up to all sorts of adventures, which I like them very much. The Frankie and Lulu, they just kind of, okay, this is what we're gonna do today. We're gonna go out and explore. We're gonna do that stuff. I mean, I grew up as Gen X, so we would go out in the morning and we'd go all day and we'd go explore ponds and catch fish, catch crabs, and do all these different things. And then you come home at night and nobody really knew what you did all day, and that's kind of what these girls did. They just went out and explored, and they came across all these dangers, but it was just another day, which I thought was cool.
I grew up right between the ocean and the estuary, and that was basically we didn't have a massive swamp. It was like a subdivision between the ocean and the estuary, but you can't tame the ocean. You can't tame the river.
Sure.
There are alligators, and they will eat you, and they do eat people, and there are sharks, and people get bitten, and there was all this wild stuff. That's one of the things I love about Florida. You can't keep the wild out of it, no matter how hard you try. You're like, oh, that's a land crab in my shower. It just happens.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely drew on particularly me and my sister's childhood experiences for those two.
Oh, excellent. And how about Algie? Where did Algie get come from?
Algie is a conglomerate of my youngest brother when he was that age, and the thoughtful child that I wish that I had been. I was very much more towards the Frankie side of the spectrum.
Okay.
I would bulldoze through things, not worry about other people. And working as a nurse knocked a lot of that hot air out of me. So yeah, Frank is a combination of those two things.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Sorry, Algie is a combination of those two things.
But you were more like Frankie and
okay,
gotcha. All right. So other influences that as you were what made you decide to go into writing from nursing?
Well, honestly, I didn't really go into writing from nursing. I've been writing ever since I can remember. I always knew that I wanted to be a writer, and I had a fairly unconventional education. I was homeschooled K through 12, which was very weird when I was a kid. Um, so when it was time to go to college, I had to decide, am I going to get a formal education in writing, or am I going to do something else with my life? And I really wanted to, I felt I wanted to do something physical that would make a difference in the world, or at least try to do that. And I didn't feel that writing was something that you had to do either or. Especially with genre writing, I didn't want to go into literary fiction, and most genre writers learn on the job. So that's what I decided I was going to do.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what? I mean, inspiration. You grew up in Florida, right?
hmm
And so that's part of the inspiration. How about the setting of the time period? What was the overall inspiration for that? For that to be a, I guess, fictional genre. I guess. Am I saying that right?
Yes, yes. Partly it was mostly because I wanted the Grand Hotel setting.
Okay.
Um, and I love the Jules Verne style stuff. Like it's very mildly steampunk. Spineless
Sure.
is very mildly steampunk,
Yep.
and I like that aesthetic. The actual germ of the characters came from a dream that my sister had. She
Okay.
dreamed that there were these two Victorian era girls that were like caricatures of us, and they, went gung ho on their adventures. And she said, "Sam, write me this story." And this was when I was in college. And so I started writing this story about these two adventuresome Victorian era girls, and they had this friend. This is another way that Algie came into being. They had the friend in the my college age version of the story who was always slowing them down, and he wasn't very good at sports and all this stuff that like my sister and I had no time for at the time. And I stopped writing the story and revisited it about 10 years later after I had gotten a lot more life under my belt. And
Okay.
I was so struck that these two girls that were my sister and I just completely wrote off their friend because he was what they thought was a wimp. And I was like, wow, was that really me? Oh my goodness, it was. And I started revisiting the character and the story, but this time I started revisiting it from their wimpy friend's point of view. And that's when it came to life.
Oh, that's fantastic. Like just the progression there over time, going back to that, and then really discovering a different way of it. And I think they really work very well together. The three of them in this book, and there's just
Yeah.
it was fun. I enjoyed it very much. My
I
son's been
wanted
reading
it
it.
to be fun.
Yeah.
That's like, I'm like, say whatever you want about it. I don't care if you like it, if you didn't like it, but don't say it's boring, please.
Oh no, definitely not boring. It's very fun and interesting. I've got a 10-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. My 10-year-old son has started reading it. He's not a big reader, so I try to get him to read anything that comes along. Actually, I try to pick the stuff that I review based upon what he might enjoy. And he's the same age as Algie, so like, hey, check this out. This is this kid, because he's not very athletic or into sports or anything like that. I'm like, here's a kid who read this. And now that I've finished
Aw.
and he hasn't, I'm like, you really got to finish reading this. So, just encouraging him to do so. But I think a lot of kids are going to enjoy this, especially a kid who might not see himself in a hero role for
hmm
any limitations that either society's put upon him or he is on himself. That this is a nice book as kind of an inspiration in that way, that no matter what the situation, you can rise to whatever challenge it is if you determine enough. So I don't know.
It's very funny because I wrote the book I wrote and sold the book in 2019. And at that time, I had your perfectly standard issue body. And in between then and now, I had a health crisis and I have a couple of lovely prosthetic limbs. And revisiting the book gave me perspective. Like, from, I felt like my past nursing self was talking to me and saying, hey, don't let yourself get tunnel vision.
Yeah.
People adapt. Everybody adapts. That's how life is. So it was a very interesting experience coming back to that after I had been put in a different position than I was when I wrote it.
It seems like this book is really you created it, but at the same time it's like taught you things through
Yes.
through going back over it. That's really, yeah, that's a, it's definitely a work of, putting your whole self into it. It sounds from what we've talked about. Definitely
Go big or go home, right?
I hope it does well. It is a great book. I enjoyed it very much. Can't wait to share this with other people and people go and pick this up because it's great. It's coming out June 7th and it should be available all over. And I will definitely have some links down below as to where you can find the book and get your own copy. Are there any other things you'd like to tell me about the book before we wrap up today?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Nothing else that no sort of like tease thing that we can't talk about any of the big reveal stuff, but
Goodness. Well, let's just say if you two were disappointed by the lack of giant sea monsters in Jules Verne, you can come to me and I'll hook you up.
Sounds good. Okay, so this is Drew Bennett from Ben Spark Family Adventures, and I'd like to thank my guest here, Samantha San Miguel, and she's the author of Spineless, and you can pick up Spineless June 7th. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter as Ben Spark, facebook.com/Ben Spark Family Adventures, and you can find me making videos all the time. Samantha, where can they find you online?
You can find me at samanthasanmiguel.com.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.